the meeting of the Springfield Township Board of Trustees. It is July 14th, 2020, at approximately 5:30 p.m. Mr. Burning, can we please have the roll call?
Yes, Ms. Davis.
Present.
Mr. Burning.
Present.
Mr. Honolo.
Present.
All the trustees are present.
Now we would ask that everyone stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The first thing that we have this evening is our 2021 tax budget public hearing. Mr. Gilbert, can you please give us some information there?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Hunter-Law. As the board is aware, the adoption of the tax budget is a required function of the township's budgetary process that we do every year. And as required, according to the statute, we have placed a legal ad in the paper 10 days prior to this public hearing. And a copy of the proposed tax budget has been available for review during that 10-day time period. As required by Ohio Revised Code 5705, the township must adopt the tax budget by July 15th and file it with the county auditor by July 20th, which is, again, what's necessitating this public hearing tonight. The tax budget identifies how much money or revenue is expected from local, state, and federal sources. Additionally, it identifies the anticipated carryovers and how much money is estimated to be expended for township operations in the next calendar year. The 2021 tax budget shows actual revenue and expenditures for 18 and 19. It shows actual revenues and expenditures for the first half of 20, and it shows anticipated or expected revenues and expenditures for the latter half of 20 and for 21. Again, as the board is aware, you know, through our budgetary process, and especially as we plan for the budgetary process by adopting the tax budget in our projections, we are very conservative. What I mean by that is we show estimated revenues in lesser amounts than we typically receive in any given year, and then we also show more expenditures than we know that we most likely will spend in any given year, so that we're never in a situation where we find ourselves appropriating more money than we anticipate or actually receive in revenue. Because again, as we've said before, unlike the federal government, we cannot deficit spend. The initial step in the budgeting process through the adoption of the tax budget, really, the whole point of it really is to allow the county to establish our certificate of resources, which then in turn is the planning document or the first step in allowing us to plan to adopt our temporary appropriations in January and then our final appropriations in March. That really is the extent of the tax budget. I think what you'll see in this year, unlike others as you look through it, is that in our levy-driven departments in police and fire, it is really tight. And I mean tight to the point where it looks as though we will not be able to operate going into 2022. And again, that's because we're showing a very conservative estimate in revenue, and we're showing a much larger anticipated expenditure than we typically see. As the board is aware, we generally spend between 85 to 87% appropriations, but in the tax budget, we show that as 100% of appropriations, which leads us to what it's showing in the tax budget this year. And that comment in that issue, if you will, showing how tight they are, will lead us to a discussion later on in this meeting, which regarding the possible certification of a ballot issue this November for police and fire levies. I think through the projections that we do internally as well as the tax budget, the need has clearly been demonstrated that those two levy-driven departments are running out of surplus funds quickly, and they are currently expending more than they're bringing in any given year, and we're living off carryover amounts at this point, and that's running out in short order. So, but that does conclude my comments regarding the tax budget, and unless the board has any questions regarding that, that's all I have.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions?
No questions.
Okay, moving on with our meeting, we have approval of minutes from our regular session, which was June 9th, 2020. and our regular work session of June 23rd, 2020. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Mr. Harlow, I think we should probably close out the public hearing.
Not the meeting, just the portions of public.
Portion of public hearing, yeah.
Do we have a motion to close the public hearing on the tax budget?
So moved.
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
And I would just note too, for the record, that there was no one present to make a comment on the hearing at the time.
All right, and we will note that for the record. Thank you. Next, on approval minutes. I think I just went over that, and we had a vote. Mr. Burning, do you have your financial report?
Yes, Mr. Honolaw, from the month ending June 30th, 2020, the township expenditures were $2,013,963.99, and receipts were $693,149.39. That gave us an ending balance of $19,935,550.97. This includes obligations for expenditures, payroll, regular operating costs, ongoing capital improvement projects, and investment. What I request is a motion to approve the receipts, warrants, payroll expenditures, updated and current revenue and reports for the period ending June 30th, 2020. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And I just want everyone to know that our financial reports are available at the township offices during regular business hours or on the internet 24/7. Thank you, Mr. Honolaw.
Thank you, Mr. Burning. Next, moving on to departmental action and discussion items. Mr. Gilbert, do we have a report?
Yes, we do. Thank you, Mr. Hunterlaw. This evening, the first action, and frankly, the only action item that I have on my agenda is a motion authorizing the distribution of the Hamilton County Engineers Office 20% funds. As the board is aware, every year, a certain portion of the county's collection of vehicle license taxes is set aside for local jurisdictions in the engineer's office area of control, and those funds are to be used for pavement related projects. Typically, we utilize the funding for pavement preservation type treatments, and this year would be no different. So I'm just asking for a motion from the board to authorize the distribution of the township's 20% funds and to utilize those funds for pavement preservation projects in the township. It amounts to just a little over $23,000 for 2020.
Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Seconded.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Several discussion items this evening. The first has to do with obviously somewhat why we're all wearing these masks. The CARES Act funding, due to the coronavirus pandemic, has allocated certain funding through the federal government to the state, then to the county, then to the local governments to allow for expenses related to the response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Springfield Township stands to receive just a little over $430,000. That funding can be utilized for expenses related to our response, whether it be salaries for safety service personnel and or equipment necessary for our response, again, related to the COVID-19 pandemic. In order to be eligible to receive that funding, the township must first pass a resolution indicating that we will receipt and expend the revenue in the manner in which the program dictates. And that's essentially what you'll see on the resolution, on the agenda later in the meeting, is a resolution to that effect. So again, I think we are still awaiting some final recommendations or guidance anyway regarding the exact way in which those funds can be expended, but it is our understanding that they can be utilized for, in particular, our medics and fire department in their response to the pandemic. So we will be exploring exactly how those funds will be expended once we get final guidance from the state and the federal treasury. Any questions regarding that?
No questions.
As I mentioned during the public hearing for the tax budget, on the agenda tonight, you see 6 different resolutions, 3 for the fire department regarding the fire district and 3 for the police department regarding the police district to explore the possibility of levies for those 2 departments. As the board is aware, it's been almost, frankly, 10 years since an increase in revenue has been realized within the fire department, and a little more than 11 years since the police department has realized any increase in revenue. And the fact that we're able to operate those 2 departments with the heavy personnel side that they have, when 2/3 of the township's personnel are in those 2 departments, and to be able to operate for more than 10 years in those 2 departments on levies that were originally scheduled to last 5 or 6 years, I think is nothing short of phenomenal, and a lot of credit goes to those 2 gentlemen regarding their judicious use of taxpayer dollars. So at this point in time, given the economic situation in the country, understanding where we're at, but at the same time, we know that the economy is hurting and that individuals in the community, it's rough for everyone. We actually intended on putting these levies on prior to all this happening. We talked about these levies last year and the anticipation that we would put them on in November of 2020. And unfortunately, anytime you have a situation like a pandemic, while the economy goes down, the need and the costs for responding to safety in emergency situations go up. So while we're looking at less revenue, and everyone in the economy obviously understands that money is tight for everyone, unfortunately for us, that's when our costs increase the most, is during situations like this, and especially in situations where we have 2 levy-driven departments and they have way outlived the longevity that those levies were ever expected to last. So you see on the agenda, 6 different resolutions. That's a necessary step in the process in order to potentially put levies on the ballot. We have to ask the county auditor how much a particular levy amount would bring in. So we have asked for a 2.5, and a 2.9 mil levy for each of the 2 departments. And then the board later on this month will be required to make a decision as to which levy amount you want to move forward with, if at all. And then those would have to be certified to the Board of Elections by August 5th in order to be on the November ballot this year. So again, we know timing is terrible. However, unfortunately for us, waiting really isn't an option. If we were to wait, then essentially we are putting ourselves in a situation where we're not going to be able to operate those 2 departments to maintain the current service levels that they're providing today.
Thank you, Mr. Gilbert.
Moving on, the University of Cincinnati Mobile Stroke Unit, I'll turn it over to Chief Leiner to give us an update on where we're at with that agreement and what service that will provide to the community.
Certainly, thanks, Mr. Gilbert. The UC Mobile Stroke Unit will officially start back up again on August the 11th. They will operate from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. 7 days per week, and will respond from Springfield Township Fire Headquarters, known as Station 79, which is right next door. The Mobile Stroke Unit will respond to other jurisdictions that are within a 15-minute response time from our location. There are only 30 mobile stroke units in the country and 4 in Ohio. So we are very, very fortunate to have a resource like this in Springfield Township. And so, once again, I'm very excited to have this resource readily available, and the collaboration and partnership with UC is going quite well. And so I'm looking forward to that date coming soon.
I have a question. They man this thing? They have somebody here to man it from 7 to 7?
They do. They'll have 4 personnel.
Wow.
On station at Station 79 from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. They will have a paramedic, 2 nurses, and a CT technician.
Wow,
that will
that's great.
respond on every detail. And the objective is to get advanced medical care to a stroke victim as quick as possible. And studies have found that early administering or early onset of stroke and intervening quickly with TPA can greatly influence a positive outcome. So that's the goal.
Fantastic. Thanks, Chief.
Good work, Chief. Absolutely.
Moving on, Chief Browder has some exciting news that we just completed our recent reaccreditation.
Thank you, Mr. Gilbert. As the board's aware, we've been a internationally actually accredited police agency since 1999. Each year we have to do compliance evaluations electronically with the commission. This was our year to do an on-site process. We were contacted by the commission with the COVID-19 pandemic going. They asked if we would be willing to do this virtually. Being that we always like to be on the forefront of technology and other things, we said, sure, we'll try it. So we did it May 18th and May 19th. We did have our on-site assessment virtually. There was a total of 28 interviews that were conducted and 188 standards, which are mandatory compliance that we have to show that we're in compliance with those high standards. Each of them were assessed individually and verified. So I just received the report last week. It looks very, very good. As the board's also aware, typically we would travel to a hearing to be awarded this, which is also going to be virtually. So I'd like to invite the board to participate in that. You won't have to travel far. So with that, for the next 4 years, we'll remain in compliance with all of the accreditation standards.
Chief, am I correct in, I think I looked it up, that we are only one of about 40 in the state of Ohio that are accredited with CALIA?
Correct. Those numbers have dwindled over the years for a number of reasons, costs and other things, and we've, through the years, it can be a costly process, but we've found a lot of different ways internally that we can do that without, incurring some of these additional costs. So, yes, we're one of about 40 in the state of Ohio, correct? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then additionally, and looking at the standards, a lot of obviously this is a hot topic in the country at this point, looking at reforms of police departments. It's also my understanding that a lot of the reforms that are being called for, especially in a lot of these large urban police departments, we already meet and exceed those standards, and in fact, we have for the better part of 20 years. Is that correct as well?
That's absolutely correct. There's been a lot of news with the Ohio Collaborative. A lot of agencies that are accredited. Right now, there's 5 or 6 standards with the Ohio Collaborative. As I said, we must comply with 188. We chose to go ahead and comply as well with the Ohio Collaborative. It's a good thing, and we've actually gone and helped a lot of other agencies in our area, help them with gaining compliance with the Ohio Collaborative because of our experience with the accreditation process. So it's worked out really well for a lot of us.
Good.
That's phenomenal. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Chief, how many police agencies are there in the state of Ohio?
That are
No,
total.
just in the total, just if you know.
You have me on that one.
It's a large
I want to say
number.
over 500.
Right. And we're one of approximately 40 that meet these standards.
Correct.
Okay. All right.
And like I said, we've been doing it since 1999, and again, with all the things happening, just for an instance, because it is a hot topic, chokeholds. Tomorrow is my 31st anniversary here. We did not have chokeholds. We had a prohibition on chokeholds before I was here. So just for the record, that's, I know a hot topic, and that's, again, I credit a lot of those to the high standards that the accreditation commission requires of us.
Yeah, we just looked it up. There are over 831 police agencies in the state of Ohio, which I think just further clarifies and proves the point that we are one of, in a select group in the state that meet these standards, and frankly across the country. And the standards by which we've been operating on for more than 2 decades I think should be the barometer by which every police department in the country is measured. And fortunately for us, we are, the model that those others should be striving for.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chief. Great job, and it's a credit to your leadership. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Looking at, again, another hot topic in the news is obviously COVID-19, and especially here in Butler and Hamilton County and Claremont County, Southwest Ohio has been called out under the governor's new, mapping and rating system. And we've received a lot of calls because at one point in time, the area code of, or the zip code of 45231 was specifically mentioned. And I wanted to bring some light to exactly what our numbers are here in Springfield Township. I know we hear a lot about the state and the county and the country, obviously, but not a lot about exactly where we live and where we work. According to the Hamilton County Health Department, and Chief, jump in here at any point in time, I'm using a lot of these from your numbers, so if they're wrong, I'm going to blame you. We have, since the beginning of recording cases, we've had 544 cases in Springfield Township. As a percentage of our population, that is 1.4% of our population. We are a community of just over 36,644 people. 81 of those 544 came out of a nursing home. 219 of that 544 have recovered. We've seen 7 deaths, which is 0.019% of our total population, or 0.02% in Springfield Township have died of COVID-19. And in the current cases of 325, which are currently active, that is 0.8%. So again, 0.8% in Springfield Township actually right now, currently, according to the health department, have COVID-19. When you look at how that compares to the Hamilton County Public Health Area, and I'm excluding the city of Cincinnati because they're not under the jurisdiction of the Hamilton County Health Department, they have their own. So looking at the county, again, excluding Cincinnati, there's been 3,691 cases, which is 0.7% of the county's population, again, excluding Cincinnati. 131 deaths, which is 0.2% of the county population, again, excluding Cincinnati. And 1,154 have recovered. Therefore, current cases in the county, 2,537, which is a little under 0.5% of the county's population. So just wanted to put things in perspective. You know, you hear a lot on the news and you hear a lot of the numbers come from the state, but I wanted to let you know what's actually happening here in your local community.
Thank you, Mr. Gilbert.
Just add real quickly, just a statement here. It is true we continue to see cases in Springfield Township, but we're also seeing an equal amount of residents that tested positive with little to no health effects. So there are people that get tested and they're positive, but they'll go 2 weeks in quarantine and not have any symptoms whatsoever. So I want people to understand that, yes, COVID is bad, but the people who have died in Springfield Township, they have all had underlying health issues. And so when you get COVID, that complicates matters. But the majority of the people that have tested positive are able to manage their health so that they get through the recovery time without a problem. So they call it a pandemic. I don't want people to panic and call it but it's something that we are managing. It's something that we work with. We have daily contact with our hospital medical directors and with the Hamilton County Health Department to stay up to date on the surge potential as it affects our local hospitals. But unfortunately, there still continues to be a shortage of N95 surgical masks. And quite honestly, that's where our focus right now. We are still continuing to have a need for PPE, and that is the masks. And so when we come in contact with a person that has tested positive for COVID, we try and put as much PPE on as we can to protect ourselves as well as protect that patient as well.
So So Chief,
That's the unfortunate part.
I have a question,
Yes, ma'am.
just for my understanding and clarification. If someone, there's been numerous pop-up sites around the city and the county. So if someone is tested for COVID, is the health department required to alert you if that person lives in Springfield Township that they've tested positive? Is that how we're getting our numbers?
Yes, ma'am, that is
Okay.
correct. Just so everybody knows how we get information. So the health department takes that data specifically by address and zip code. Then they match it up to Springfield Township. That information is given to the Hamilton County Communications Center. Then that information is given to me daily. So then I update it, I share that information with Mr. Gilbert, and then it is disseminated internally to those as well as the police so that we know what addresses have someone there that is tested positive so we can take the appropriate precautions to minimize exposure to our personnel.
Good.
And I provide those numbers and those statistics not to hypothesize or to provide an opinion relative to the pandemic, but more just to provide context and provide some, information so that individuals can make up, their own decision and have their own opinion on it. Rather than hearing general statistics, I wanted to, exactly know what's happening where you actually live.
Thank you. Good information.
Moving on, looking at our personnel update for June, we had a resignation, two resignations in the Arts Center, Joe Stripling and Mary Depay. Is that correct? Resignation June 4th of 2020, and Mary was May 29th of 2020. We did have several new hires at the Arts Center started to reopen. We did hire some part-time personnel to man the front desk and to provide assistance during classes. Tikwa Hervin, data hire June 29th. Robin Gaines, data hire June 29th. Actually, all of these are hired June 29th. Janelle Holly, Camille Jones, Lindsay Shepard, and Jennifer Tausch. All hired on June 29th to provide customer service, guest services for the Arts Center as they reopen. I think the first night was last night, correct? That concludes my personnel update. Now I will turn it over to Kim to talk about the events happening in the Arts Center.
Thank you. Yeah, we're excited. We have 97 students that are registered for our first session, which will be for the next 6 weeks. So opening under a pandemic is very difficult, but I think people are ready to get back to have some kind of normalcy. We're able to social distance a lot of people out, and that also follows along with the few events that we are able to host. So this coming Thursday, we're going to have our first movie night, and we are doing those with 8-foot social distancing circles with 10-foot in between each circle. So people have to register in advance for a circle, and it's by a family. They will arrive on Thursday. They'll receive a flag for the number of circles that they have reserved, and they get to go out and select their circle, and the movie will start at 9:30 p.m. So we had these movie nights already scheduled earlier in the year, and we had planned on having, food and drinks and games, so we've cut all of that out, but we are still able to at least have a nice family outing free of charge, and that is going to be this Thursday. We're showing Night at the Museum, and then we're showing a second movie on July 30th. It's also on a Thursday night, and we are showing E.T. So those are the two events that we have scheduled for July.
What's the one this week?
I'm sorry?
What's the one this week?
Night at the Museum.
Thank you, Kim.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Moving on, the board has copies of the departmental activity reports, and unless there are any questions regarding those, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Gilbert. Next, moving on to resolutions this evening, we have resolution number 55, 2020, adopting the 2021 tax budget. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Davis.
Aye.
Mr. Burning.
Aye.
Mr. Harnwell.
Aye.
Resolution carries.
Next, we have Resolution Number 56, 2020, requesting County Auditor to certify the current tax valuation of the township and the dollar amount of revenue that would be generated by an additional 2 mill levy to provide funds for fire equipment, salaries, and related costs for the Springfield Township Fire District pursuant to Section 5705.19I of the Ohio Revised Code. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Davis.
Aye.
Mr. Burning.
Aye.
Mr. Honolo.
Aye.
Resolution carries.
Next, we have Resolution Number 57, 2020, requesting County Auditor to certify the current tax valuation of the township in the dollar amount of revenue that would be generated by an additional 2.5 mill levy to provide funds for fire equipment, salaries, and related costs for the Springfield Township Fire District pursuant to Section 5705.19I of the Ohio Revised Code. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Davis.
Aye.
Mr. Burning.
Aye.
Mr. Honolo.
Aye.
Resolution carries.
Continuing on with these resolutions, we have Resolution Number 58, 2020, requesting County Auditor to certify the current tax valuation of the township and the dollar amount of revenue that would be generated by an additional 2.9 mill levy to provide funds for fire equipment, salaries, and related costs for the Springfield Township Fire District pursuant to Section 5705I of the Ohio Revised Code. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Aye. Second.
Ms. Davis.
Aye.
There you go. Mr. Burning.
Aye.
Mr. Honolo.
Aye.
Resolution carries.
Next, we have Resolution Number 59, 2020, requesting County Auditor to certify the current tax valuation of the township and the dollar amount of revenue that would be generated by an additional 2.0 mill levy to provide funds for police equipment, salaries, and related costs for the Springfield Township Police District pursuant to Section 5705.19J of the Ohio Revised Code. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Seconded.
Ms. Davis.
Aye.
Mr. Burning.
Aye.
Mr. Honolo.
Aye.
Resolution carries.
Next, we have Resolution Number 60, 2020, requesting County Auditor to certify the current tax valuation of the township and the dollar amount of revenue that would be generated by an additional 2.5 mill levy to provide funds for police equipment, salaries, and related costs for the Springfield Township Police District pursuant to Section 5705.19J of the Ohio Revised Code. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Seconded.
Ms. Davis.
Aye.
Mr. Burning.
Aye.
Mr. Honolo.
Aye.
Resolution carries.
Next is Resolution Number 61, 2020, requesting the County Auditor to certify the current tax valuation of the township and the dollar amount of revenue that would be generated by an additional 2.9 mill levy to provide funds for police equipment, salaries, and related costs for the Springfield Township Police District pursuant to Section 5705.19J of the Ohio Revised Code. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Seconded.
Ms. Davis.
Aye.
Mr. Burning.
Aye.
Mr. Honolo.
Aye.
Resolution carries.
Next, we have Resolution Number 62, 2020, requesting funding from the Hamilton County Coronavirus Relief Distribution Fund to cover expenses consistent with the requirements of Section 5001 of the CARES Act. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Seconded.
Ms. Davis.
Aye.
Mr. Burning.
Aye.
Mr. Honolo.
Aye.
Resolution carries.
Next, we have Resolution Number 63, 2020, establishing Special Revenue Fund 2272, Coronavirus Relief Fund, and Revenues and Appropriations. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Seconded.
Ms. Davis.
Aye.
Mr. Burning.
Aye.
Mr. Honolo.
Aye.
Resolution carries.
Next, we have Resolution Number 64, 2020, declaring nuisances pursuant to Ohio Revised Code Section 505.87 at various listed properties within Springfield Township and authorizing the statutory actions necessary to abate the nuisances. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Seconded.
Ms. Davis.
Aye.
Mr. Burning.
Aye.
Mr. Honalaw.
Aye.
Resolution carries.
And finally, on our resolutions this evening, we have Resolution Number 65, 2020, establishing assessment for abatement of nuisance and certifying same to the Hamilton County Auditor. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Seconded.
Ms. Davis.
Aye.
Mr. Burning.
Aye.
Mr. Honalaw.
Aye.
Resolution carries.
Thank you, everyone. Next, do we have any old business before the board?
I do not.
I do not.
Any new business this evening?
Not tonight.
With that, we come to citizens' participation. If there's anyone that wants to address the board, we would ask that you come forward, state your name and address.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Welcome.
First of all, I just wanted to go over some things from the last meeting. I wanted to say, as I think Michael's not here, are you Kathleen? I want to say kudos to Kathleen because some of the things that I asked her to do, she did do it. The other day.
How'd you get her to do that? I didn't even know how.
I guess it comes to me. But seriously, I want to say kudos to her because I think we were in touch with her email maybe 3 times. And I really didn't understand, and that was really hard to read about the blighted property. So I explained it to her. She understood. So she gave me a recap and sent me something that I, could understand. It wouldn't take too much time. And also, we had a dead raccoon in the middle of the road. Was really big, and I didn't know who to call, so I reached out to her, and I guess less than 2 hours, they picked it up, so that was good. And Michael, I really want to say kudos to him as well, because he has been working with me, and I know he's out, his life just happened.
Yeah.
So he did, I asked him about the street cleaner, and they did come out, and he did put up some notices, because if people did not know,
Right.
therefore they would have parked, and this wouldn't have been, this couldn't have happened. So they did come by, they did do the street sweep, and also on my street, they came down twice, so I appreciate that. Then him and I discussed about the roads, the pavement, because they were pretty bad.
Yeah.
So he was honest, he did say that they was going to patch, and I said, so in essence, you're just gonna put a Band-Aid on it right now. So we talked about some things in the budget. He wants me to get back with him on October.
Okay.
But it's the area on Delbrin and, what is that, Madeline Circle. He's aware of that, but it's very bad, it's very rugged. When it rains, it's like a high level of water.
Right.
So I would like to address that. And then 3, there was a blighted house. I don't know if you guys are familiar. It's on David Road in Madeline Circle, the corner house. However, it was so bad off, the bushes had grew over the fence. It was coming on the pavement. And so I took the liberty to get out to take a picture because I was trying to turn, and it was like a really bad
Right.
corner. And you might be familiar with the house.
I think so, yes.
And it's terrible. You couldn't see, and I didn't want an accident to happen. So I reached out to him, I uploaded the pictures and sent it to him. He didn't hesitate, he just said, where are the pictures? And I said, I did send you pictures. So in cap, I sent him the pictures one by one. As soon as he saw it, he was on it. Today, I was leaving out, and they cut down everything.
Good.
So I just want to say kudos to him as well
Fantastic. Thank you.
for that. And to go back, I kind of wanted to touch base I guess that's about the levy. And did I hear someone say that they're gonna go back over that or something? They have to talk to the auditor or?
We passed these resolutions asking the auditor to evaluate the current assessed valuation of the township and to say hypothetically, if we put a 2 mil levy on the ballot, how much money would that bring in given our current assessed valuation? And we also did it at 2.5 and at 2.9 mils. So we're asking the auditor just to look at the tax rolls and to give us the information so that as a board, we can make a decision.
Okay, so, the next meeting, next month, will you have a clue of what the outcome is after you speak with the auditor?
Yes.
Will it be later
Yes.
on? Okay.
No, it will be at the next meeting.
The next meeting?
Yes, in August.
And another thing,
Won't it be in our work session?
No, we will know at that
We
meeting
will know.
what we've asked the Board of Elections in order to put on the ballot.
Yeah.
The decision will have to be made prior to that meeting, but we will know what it'll be, and we will announce what we did at that particular meeting in August.
and that will be on the, that would be for voting in November, is that?
Yes, that's correct.
I'll make sure of that. And also, I wanted to touch base about the COVID and the cases. And I know, Christopher, I think that was you stated, about the funding for the CARES Act. And then you went over some analysis about the cases out here. And I just wanted to ask you, with the CARES Act, could you use some of that money? Because the only time I believe we did have testing out here in the area, it was on Galvin at the church.
There was actually testing done also just over the border into Forest Park at the old Kmart parking lot.
Yes, I was aware.
Yeah, that one, and there's several more, I think, happening. But that funding, while we could use it for that, theoretically, we don't have to. The county health department and the state is providing that testing exclusive of that funding. So it isn't really necessary for us to do that. But I would constantly check the Hamilton County Health Department's website because they are providing testing sites. New ones come up every week. So there are a lot in this area. I know there's probably at least every day 3 or 4 that you can get to within 10 or 15 minutes of here. So.
Well, I was aware of the, North College Hill, but like I said, a lot of people in the township, if they don't know about it, they can't come out,
Yeah.
so.
We put it all over our social media, so we try and get the word
Okay,
out.
so it's on social
It is.
media
Mhm.
and things like that.
Yeah.
So I was just wondering with the cases, and I'm quite sure it's more, and trying to depend on the government with these test kits and issuing them out and
Right.
trying to break down territorial space and things
Sure.
like that. I was just hoping and wondering in our area, because I know it has been on the news for a hot spot, and the only place that I'm familiar with that they had it, was
Yeah.
on Galvin at the church.
But there's been more, but
Yeah,
you just,
but I've never seen specifically right here in our area, so I was wondering, or you guys, or would you be more reluctant to have something in our area for that?
no, and not reluctant, but, and I wanted to point out and utilize the statistics just to show people as well, is that make up your own mind whether it's a hot spot or not. But, and purely looking at the numbers, well over 99% of the township right now isn't even positive for COVID-19. So you can extrapolate that and then take that for whatever it's worth, but, less than 1% of the township has tested, right now, is testing positive for COVID-19.
And just so you know, the township stretches from I-75
I know, I'm aware.
all the way up to Fairfield, all the way up to past Winton-Woods, all the way back to Simpson and North Bend.
Over
So
Roseline.
Yes, I'm aware.
wherever we had it wouldn't necessarily be closer, like, for people in the township, if you know what I mean. If we had it at Pleasant Run Farms, people that are way over in Edgemont it'd be way easier for them to go somewhere closer to their house. So we have tried to have them close by, but we aren't against having them in the township. It's just not.
Well, we've worked with the county health department, with the health director, and I spoke with him directly to say that while and because of the exact reasons that Mr. Burning just described, while we're not opposed to having it in the township, it isn't necessary to be within our borders for our residents to go to them. So we've tried to find sites that, while they may not be in the township per se, they're still accessible to different parts of our community. So working with our neighboring jurisdictions, we were hoping that some of those testing sites, as we made them available and announced those locations, that some of our residents would take advantage of those testing sites. Because as I mentioned, just because the testing site may be in Woodlawn, or it may be in Forest Park, or it may be in Mount Healthy, doesn't mean that Springfield Township residents can't go to those, because they are Hamilton County testing sites, not testing sites for that particular local jurisdiction.
I'm aware of that. I was just saying, for instance, when they did have the testing in Forest Park, the lines were long, they were around the corner, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So
All the lines are long. They had one on Colerain Avenue, and the line was like a mile back up down Colerain Avenue.
Unfortunately, that's every time you have one, that's the case.
So that's why I just.
Yeah, but we will continue to look and explore, and we'll continue to put on our social media the different sites throughout the county, and feel free to take advantage, or any resident take advantage of any of those sites that's in Hamilton County.
And so you said the testing sites, you do put them on the social media?
Yes.
Just like us on Facebook, like Springfield Township on Facebook.
Okay.
They post all
So
about,
it's Facebook, do you have Twitter,
We do.
all of them? Okay, so I can let the people.
Yep.
And just so you know,
About that.
if you go to the Springfield Township website, you can not only see all the stuff going on, but if you only want to hear about art stuff, you can check that. If you only want to hear about police, you can just check. Whatever you check, that's the information that you'll be sent on Springfield Township's website. So you don't have to get, that's correct, right? You don't have to get everything. You can pick the stuff that you're interested in, and then that you would only be sent stuff about those particular things instead of being sent every single time we send something out. So that might be an easy way for you to go on our website and pick the items that you want to be sent information about, and we automatically would send that to you whenever something came about.
Can I ask you real quick your name and address, because we didn't get it at the beginning?
Yes, my name is Gloria Keese, Keese,
Okay, address?
and I reside at 1104 Racewind Court.
Thank you. I try to keep notes, and I didn't hear at the beginning.
If I may, the new schedule just came out today. If you're familiar with Edgemont, part of Springfield Township, Section Road, New Missionary Baptist Church, I can't tell you the date, but it just popped up today. You might want to take a look. It's on the county's health department, yeah.
Yeah, and share with the people in my neighborhood. I can do that. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I believe, let me see, that was the last thing that I wanted to speak about.
Okay.
Well, we do appreciate you coming to our meetings.
Thank you very much.
It's very lonely.
I mean, I'll be here next month to follow up with some things as well.
Okay.
Thank you for
Thank you
coming.
very
always
much.
welcome.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. It appears that there is no one else to engage in citizens' participation. Do we have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Seconded?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Meeting's adjourned.
Thank you for coming.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.